nice sunny day review of it. Review of what you said and what we're going to do about it, if possible. We've currently got 178 people in the class. Not that you'd guess from the attendance every week. We got 81 responses, about 46%, so not too bad. I was encouraging people to take part so that we get the widest range of views rather than the people who just got like a strong view about one particular aspect. Of those 81, 2 have never attended, 12 have attended only once. I think they're going to have a problem getting through the course. In general, there was some positive feedback, but one or two issues that I'll just raise from the following. This sheet, by the way, is available on Moodle. It's at the top of the page, just underneath the original link to do the survey. The level of difficulty question. Unfortunately, I left a little sort of other bit on it, which are all the little sort of tiny bits. It was supposed to be just too hard, just right, or too easy. And then a few people added their own because I left this sort of a little bit in. But in general, that just right was about sort of 70% for it. There was a too easy and a few others sort of saying things around. And then about 22 saying it was too hard. For the ones who are finding it too hard, well, I don't know really. We supply as much help as really as we can in it. We certainly get the feedback on the help supplied was sort of good. And if you are part of that 22% and are finding it too hard to do, I suggest you sort of arrange a meeting with myself or Ryan to discuss areas where we might be able to improve how you're perceiving the module and how you might progress at a better rate for that. The material there on Moodle, ranging 81% thought it was just sort of okay. We did get some feedback from people saying there's too much material there. And again, just a little bit more on that just in a moment when we look at the individual sort of comments that people might have said for it there. So yeah, 12% thinking it's too much. Some saying it's not enough, which sort of contradicts one side or the other. But I think we're probably pitching it right, really, in terms of the material available there for it. The unit's taught well. Right? What do you think of it? There's the green one there for agreeing. Strongly agree the purple one. Orange, sort of in the middle. Meh. Sort of, don't really sort of care too much about it. I suppose I counted that really as not saying one way or the other. Well, no, you're okay with it then. And then there's a slight sort of disagreement with it, but in general it seems to be fairly satisfied that the material's going over okay, what's happening there. Do you feel challenged by the module? Again, a sort of, it's supposed to be hard. I mean, if it was too easy, you're really on the wrong module, sort of thing. If you're finding it way too easy, then you should have chosen something a bit more difficult if possible to do. Learning's supposed to be hard. Any module that you do is always hard at the time. When you look back on it, you think, why couldn't I understand it at the time? Like when you look back at your first year programming, that was really hard at the time, and yet now you think, well, there was no difficulty really there for it. It's just always hard at the time to sort of work on. So I'm sort of okay with that. I expect people to find it hard for it. You know, if not all the time, at least sort of some of the time. You know, if you're feeling, you've got to feel challenged. The old cliche about no pain, no gain for it. Do you understand the assessment types? For that, do you understand how you're being assessed? That's both sort of available just at the top of the Moodle page and being emailed out to you. 50% the first coursework, 50% the second coursework. And we just look at your overall average for that. Most people seem to have grasped that for it. 18% sort of partial. Maybe that was to do with not understanding the individual piece of assessment. And then slither there of don't understand what the assessment is at all on this. So it's just really just to reflect what's sort of going out. And do you understand the assessment criteria for it, like what you're asked to do for that? And again, a sort of, in general, seems to be sort of okay, or mostly. And that's why I've been also, when people put out a question about, I don't quite understand what we're being asked here, I'll send it out around the sort of class to explain it. Again, a bit more on the feedback in a moment, because some people said there was too many of these messages going out. And again, that probably same one or two who don't understand the assessment criteria at all there for it. Do you enjoy the unit? Do you enjoy sort of studying this? Yeah, in general, again, that blue and red, people sort of do. We've got 8%, almost 9% possibly saying they don't. Again, if there's some way that we could sort of change that for you, there's an anonymous suggestion area where you can just leave anonymous suggestions if you don't want to sort of contact me. But if there's something that you feel might be able to particularly improve for you, then let me know. Either anonymously through that Dropbox for it, or just drop me a mail, come and see me, have some informal comment in labs, whichever, because we'd like everybody to at least sort of enjoy it somewhat to it, not see it as too much of a trial. Do you know how to get help? Yes, I think in general people do for it there. And if anything, some of the feedback comments, as I say, are we're getting too much help. Is some of the comments feeding back from that. No, I don't know how we might sort of indicate how to get help in a better way. There's so many ways of getting help, either personally in labs, personally to come and see your tutor for it in an office. Email is often a sort of common one. Loads of help messages sent out, so it's a bit sort of baffling of the bits about don't know how to get help. But again, if you don't know, please contact me. Just ask me. Where can I get some extra help on this or for that? Are you confident that you can do well? Fairly confident and very confident there for the blue and red. So about 86% for it. Probably there's people who are having difficulty with it are the ones who are feeling not confident. Again, help sessions always available. Please just ask if you're having some sort of issues with it. I might point you at some particular document to say, well, rather than me going over this again, here's a document, have a look at that first and then come and talk to me about it. So if you're in that not confident stage, please get in contact, have a look at the material that we're making available for it. The final sort of two sections, these are the ones where you could put some sort of written feedback about the things that you found good about the module and the things that you felt could improve for it. Try to bunch them together. One-off comments, one comment if you like out of 80 sort of submitted, depending on what it said, is generally maybe just somebody having a quiet shout about something. In general, they fell into these sort of categories for it. 52 comments overall, as I say, try to grasp them together. The red parts are what we want to do. The teaching comments were, in general, very positive. And thanks for that. It does seem to be going over okay there. In general, I'll probably just carry on as I am doing for it. There was something about my style that you didn't like, and I might be able to change it, I don't know, but there's not many sort of complaints there for it. The subject matter, in general, again, sort of 13 comments there, of the sort of positive side. People just finding it in general sort of interesting, useful for where you might use it in the IoT industry. They saw sort of beyond where the actual labs are to what might sort of come up and perhaps how to set up home devices. And there's still more of that sort of relevant content to come. I'm having a look today at something called Node-RED for building IoT applications, and then next week I'm going to look at the voice control of systems. So again, that was sort of fairly positive. Some positive comments about the lab. There about 14 comments. And yet, some people, believe it or not, finding it interesting and enjoyable. May not be the case for some. Some like the fact that the solutions were given. Some didn't like the fact that the solutions were given. But it said we should just sort of hide them for a couple of weeks and then, to force people to do it more. Structure of labs seemed to sort of go down well. And a couple of comments about the assignment saying people actually found it, dare I say, interesting and relevant to it. Not too many on that. In general, people are often more interested in, well, what were the bad things said, what were the things where could improve. And by far the biggest one is this fidget kit availability. We're often getting things from that. So the kit availability being that it's on 24-hour loan, there's sometimes sort of not enough for it. I'll just come back to that in a second because I've got quite a few sort of thoughts on that one. Sometimes this second one, there were about too many help messages on Moodle. Some said there was too little help and some said there was too much help for it. So again, sort of bit contradictory there for it. Some were saying, oh, we're getting too many emails, I'm just ignoring them now for it that's coming out. That's your choice sort of thing. But the reason why I'm sort of sending a lot of these out, if I get a common comment or common question off 4 or 5 people, in my view, it's unfair to give that 4 or 5 people an advantage by saying, well, this is how you do it, here's the extra advice to you. But just by sort of targeting the people willing to come forward and ask something, there may be some sort of good advice in there. And in my view, it's better to share that good advice around everything so we don't get sort of comments about, oh, it's unfair, you seem to favour these people who come and see you for it. So in general, if it's a common type thing, I will keep sort of broadcasting out that common help. And if you don't want it, that's fine. It's easy to ignore an email if you like. But if later on you do come asking for help, I may say, well, we had to actually discuss that on the forum to it. Have a look at that document first to sort of get it. So as I say, I try to avoid giving help just to individuals. You don't have to follow these suggestions. There was a comment about lectures and labs not seeming to match up. But they didn't see that the lecture was relevant to perhaps what you're sort of doing in the labs. The labs are the practical implementation of what we're doing in the lectures. The lectures are the theoretical part to it, and they cover as well, lectures cover task 3. And if you have a look at the diagram when I talked over task 3 last night, last week, I pointed out the relevant lectures to doing task 3. About how you needed to know what a node was, how you needed to know what the network protocols were, how you might get the topology right for things for it. And I pointed you at sort of certainly about 4 or 5 lectures that would help with that. So definitely relevant to the assignment, and as I say, you actually implementing the ideas that we're talking about here for it. So, I mean, maybe a bit further explanation might be useful of some. If they said that there. I'll just come back to that fidget kit in a moment, just to the last point. Comments about the labs, again, was a common sort of thing. Some thought they were too easy, some thought they were too hard. Probably means that we're pitching it right, actually, when you get things sort of either side for it. There's generally extension work attached to something. Just about every lab is linked to the assignment. So it's sort of relevant in that way. The solutions are always given, and extensive help's given over the forum. Now that means that there's often sort of quite a few files associated with it. Solution files, testing files, just to try out one little aspect of it. And that sort of also sort of ties in to people, some people, not by no means everybody, trying to do the assignment without having done any preliminary work. And it's very difficult to do that assignment unless you've done some sort of preliminary work. So yes, it's true, I will point to people, to the labs, saying, look, to do this particular section of the assignment, you really need to have done and understood this particular lab. And if you don't, you will have sort of trouble. And so if you choose not to do the lab, okay, it's difficult for me to help you then. for it. And I mean sort of doing the lab rather than just, oh yeah, I understand that and reading through it. Even to the extent sometimes, some people sort of, and I've said this to a few people in the labs, they go through a lab and it's just, oh yeah, it says type this or type that, oh type this or type that. And you're sort of doing the lab but not really sort of following it, what you're actually doing. Sometimes it's good to revisit a lab, particularly if you then sort of got to do some assessment work based on that, so that you can follow exactly what was going on for it. But following on from that, that's the other sort of improvement that a couple of people sort of said there. There was too many examples in the lab projects, and they were sort of having difficulty sifting out which one was the right one. Yeah, that's true. There are a lot of examples to do it. But I do point out in the help sort of parts which labs are particularly useful and which files are particularly useful for it. That comes from perhaps sort of too many of the mails going out. But just to go back onto that fidget kit availability and the response that we've done on that. Yes, they're available for 24 hours. That's really to allow the maximum sharing of these sort of kits. We have got a limited number of kits, and to this extent, from what people have sort of said earlier on in the term, Head of Department did allocate another £3,000 to spend on getting extra kits. That's 20 extra fidget kits available. It's still going to be 24-hour borrowing. Unfortunately, we've got a few abusers of the system who keep it for longer than that, and that means that other people then sort of can't borrow it. So we get some people who take it out, don't return it for 2 weeks, or something like that. And that's a bit of a headache for everybody else. You know, what do you do in that situation for it? Other than maybe saying, well, you can't borrow it again, or send a stern email to them or something like that, saying please return it to it. But yeah, you know, please, if you are borrowing it, if you're only just going to leave it on the shelf at home, that's doing nobody any good. It's doing you no good. You know, and it's certainly doing your classmates no good for that. Also, the actual idea of hardware lending, we're about the only department that does any hardware lending. Going to engineering, if you're going doing chemistry, going doing electrical engineering or something, you have to use the equipment in the labs. You have to use the chemical equipment in the labs. They don't loan it out for it. So we're one of the only sort of places in the university that actually do loan out this hardware. And really, with lab attendance still quite low, that's where you get the most help. That's where the kit is to be used. And that's how the rest of the university does it, really. Just as an example, in one of yesterday's lab, I had 20 free spaces. So there was, you know, sort of 20 kits going begging for 2 hours that people weren't sort of using. And whilst that was a bit sort of extreme, I mean, we've typically got sort of 10 free spaces in all these labs for it. So, and we do get comments about, oh, well, I don't like coming in on that day, it's too far for me to travel, I've got something else going on or something. To be blunt, that's your choice. If you choose not to come in for it, that's your choice, whether it's too far away. And you know, I live hour and a half away. I wish I didn't have to come in for work and give some of the stuff. But you know, the fact that you live too far away, that's what you're paying for. You know, 30 quid an hour or whatever it might work out at. If you decline to come into a lab, throwing away 60 quid. That sort of. Now, I know I'm probably preaching to the converted in here, because the people who don't go to labs probably aren't in here. So, but if you might G up people who you know, that sort of thing, tell them how much money they're wasting, and the fact that we have got limited resources. It'd be great if we did have single kits for every people, but unfortunately that's not the case. If you take it to extremes, you might have, say you were teaching on some sort of medical course, and you had to learn how to use MRI scanners. You're not going to be, every person in the class isn't going to be given an MRI scanner to take home at £400,000 and weighing 2 tons, something like that. You book time in a lab at a certain time to sort of do it. So, and that's when all the support's there. That's when people are sort of there with you, sort of indicating what to do to sort of go on. So please, you know, try and make the most of it. We've got these extra labs going on. The labs repeating 5 times. and a few people are dropping into the other sessions, and I don't mind that as long as they're not interfering with the actual sort of session going on. So if you can come into another lab, as well as your sort of normal one, that's sort of okay, as long as you sort of recognise that you'll give priority to whoever's supposed to be in the lab at that time. But it gives you a bit of extra time. I'm also suggesting to, again, sort of head of department, the one with the hands on the funds, about making, say, that lab available for Wednesday afternoon and just having one of the technicians open the cupboard and sit in there. Not to provide support to it, but just to make the equipment available on a sort of set time to give a bit sort of extra time. So if people have got some sort of suggestions, other than just saying, throw some money at it, the thing is, well, we have thrown some money at it, sort of thing, to it, but there's a limit to what we sort of can do. Also in labs, another thing I'll be showing you is you don't actually need the hardware for a lot of the experimentation. If, for example, we look at one of the motor movers, sure, you don't actually need a motor to do this sort of testing. You might have this up. You might be working on, say, the motor part to it and getting it to sort of turn, so you're building up your callback, then saying, okay, that uses a motor subscriber callback. The point at which it actually uses the motor is there in this sort of section when you actually say, get the motor to move. All you need to do, comment out that section. Your motor's not connected then, but you will still get all the rest of it sort of working together. You'll get the messages coming out, waiting until the motor turns to this, the motor has finished turning or something. So you can test a lot of these things independently without the actual hardware. Yeah.
Does it actually run?
Well, no, it won't turn the motor because you've not, if you haven't got the motor.
Because what I found is that when you plug it in, the widget library loads the classes at runtime depending on what you've got plugged in. So if you don't have something plugged in, like a class that underpins that might not be loaded, and then you
well, in this particular one, it depends on how you structure it. I understand what you're saying. It depends on how you structure it. The only class that activates the motor in this case is that widget motor mover. And so if that's disabled out of the project, it's not going to even sort of attempt to load it to it. So you would basically just say, well, let's take out the actual moving part of it. Or similarly, with, say, the RFID part, yes, I know that you've got things like you might have your RFID client, say, that's working with this, and then at some point you're wanting to publish the tag data or send it over to a server. You could write a little driver class, just a little temporal based on an existing one that you've got, that just does publishing RFID data. So if you didn't have your RFID hardware to hand, use something like we had a DB tester, sensor to server DB tester. This particular one, and quite a few people are used to it, said, look, if we just create a sensor data object or any object that we want, that's emulating picking up some sensor data, whether it's RFID or whatever. So you could create an RFID dummy value there, and then just use your bit about sending it to the server alongside it. So you could use that sensor to server DB tester to just emulate sending out RFID ones to work with it. You don't need a physical kit connected all the time. Sort of to throw things out and say, well, I can't progress because I haven't got the kit. You can do a lot. I mean, yes, eventually you will actually have to sort of test it with a bit of kit. You are actually having the lab sessions to sort of using these, but you can still do a lot outside, particularly over on that server side. No hardware needed if you're developing the server applications. And as I say, even if you're just building together a temporary driver to sort of emulate sending RFID data or slider data or whatever you're wanting to send. Just create a piece of sensor data or RFID tag data if you're using a different class to it, and then just say, okay, well, here's a dummy one, I'll send that over. And you can progress on, basically, with it. It's not, you know, the idea is it's not the end of the world if you don't have one there. There's still a huge amount you can do. Anyway, that's the sort of feedback, really, for it. If anybody's got feedback on the feedback sort of type thing, we get a never-ending loop. Feel free, drop a message or something like that, comment on something, or the anonymous one if you want to sort of give that, if you don't want to sort of put a face to sort of sending a comment on. I'm fine with that. I'm bothered that it's just sort of taken up too long out of the session, but that's available just online to take a look at. Today's session, we're going to have a look at something called Node-RED. Now, Node-RED is a library that sits on top of a programming language called Node.js, and many people are actually already aware of that. Based on JavaScript, people often think of JavaScript only running in a browser, can be used as a standalone programming language. And this technique called Node-RED sits on top of it and gives you a visual interface for programming things for the internet to use that. So there's a little, there's an example lab for this. Now it's not needed for the assignment, so you'll do it if you're feeling on top of things for it, or try it later on once you've got your assignment maybe more out of the way there for it and how to set it up. But there's a nice little introductory video that one of the guys who was on the team who developed it put together for that. So I'm just going to sort of initially just play that and then go over what's exactly in it and give you a live demo as well.
Hi, my name is Roderick Yates. I work at IBM. I wanted to show you something called Node-RED, which is a piece of open source code which was written by IBM Hursley, Dave Conway-Jones and Nico Leary. If you go to node-red.org, you can download it. It's actually a really excellent toolkit for piecing together Internet of Things apps or web apps or mobile apps. So what I wanted to do is kind of show you the kinds of things that you can do with it very, very quickly. So I was going to take a Twitter node, and I was going to basically take all data that was coming off that Twitter node to do with Wimbledon, and I was going to store that into a SQL database. In this case, I'll be using Mongo, but it could be using Cloudant or Couch or anything that you really fancy. Once it's saved, I was going to write a REST API, which you would use if you were running a mobile or a web app, to basically pull all the data back in JSON. At the same time, I'll put some sentiment analytics on it. So hopefully within the next 3 minutes, I'll be able to do all that and you can get a good idea about the kind of things that you can do. So it's node-red.org. So without any ado, let me start the timer. Okay, the timer started. So the first thing we need to do is put out the Twitter node. So the first thing I'll do that is configure the Twitter node. Click here to authenticate with Twitter. It will pull the data that I need to allow me to use Node-RED with Twitter. And there we are. It's using my hashtag of Andrew Tennis fan. So we'll search for everything to do with Wimbledon. I'm going to call it Get Wimbledon Tweets. Okay, there we go. So just to show that's working, I'm going to put a debug node out there. We join the two together. The debug node basically allows you to see what's going on in real time. Press deploy. And what deploy then does is start taking the tweets from Wimbledon, and you'll start seeing them over in this window here which says debug. At the same time, I'd like to save those tweets to Mongo. Okay, so I'll create a Mongo node, and I'll configure that one. In this case, the node's running on another machine on my rig, and I'll call the database Wimbledon. Okay, call it whatever you want really. No username and password needed, and then we'll call the collection tweets. Okay, so we're now going to save these things. Save Wimbledon tweets. There we are. That's just a name to give it. Okay, so there's that taking place. So every time, as soon as I deploy this, bang, every single one of those tweets that's coming in is going to be being saved into that Mongo database. So if I wanted a really quick way to get that data back, let's say I was writing a mobile web application, I wanted to put it back, everything starts with the REST API. So I'll configure the REST API, and I'm going to say show tweets. Now every time I call this show tweets REST API, it will pull all the data that's sitting within that Mongo database that I've just created, and it will return it. So I connect it to the Mongo database. I've already got Wimbledon set up, and it's the tweets collection, right? Get tweet data. Call that whatever you want. And every HTTP request ends up with an HTTP response. All right, so let's just join those together, and that's the API now written. Okay. So what we should be able to do is open up another window here, and I'm going to make the call to the show tweets API. Ready? So it's slash show tweets. Look at that. That's the data that's been saved in real time as we've been looking at this, okay? So you can see, you check the time, Saturday, June 7th, that's CET, it's 15:37. So the next thing I'm going to do to this, I'm going to add and show you how to do sentiment analytics. When I delete that, there's a little sentiment node down here. You can drag it, you can connect it, you can use a function node quite easily, and the function node will allow you to basically add data. So in this particular case, I've got 10 minutes to do, and I'm going to call it add sentiment, and I'm going to basically say message.payload plus equals message.sentiment.score. Okay, so I've just gone over 3 minutes a little bit, but it's not too bad. Sentiment plus, and that's basically that coded. Okay, let me deploy that. Now, when I clear this, what you'll now be able to see is every time a new Wimbledon tweet comes in, you'll be able to see the sentiment score at the back end of it. The sentiment's provided by something called AFIN, and AFIN is just a simple open source piece of list of words basically with a +5 or -5 depending on whether it's got nice words or nasty words in it. So there's a rude word in it, or a hate word or a love word that will obviously affect the score. Okay, so what I basically showed you there is a very quick way of getting tweets out, an extremely quick way of then saving those tweets to the database, a very quick way of writing a REST API. Maggie's not defined, you know that was thinking, that was me making a spelling mistake. So Mag isn't defined because it was message I was supposed to be doing, so I'll just fix that now. And now of course the ubiquitous Twitter rate limit hit always happens. What it basically means is I've done more than 180 comebacks, 180 tweets back in a 15-minute window. So I'm afraid this is where I'm going to stop. I hope you got the idea, okay? So we basically create Wimbledon tweets, get a whole bunch of data back from that, and we save them to a Mongo database. Okay, I'll now just have the rate limit lifted. So if we now go to, again, the REST API that I just crafted, and go down to the bottom, you should see the very, very latest tweet that came through, which was, let's see, here it is, by Rich Aaron. So Rich Aaron's, you're famous, 1539, okay, which was the latest one that's come through. So there we go, I hope you've enjoyed it. Very, very quick way of using Node-RED. The huge amounts of functions that you can use here as well are quite stunning. There's a really good community there, so people are writing their own nodes. If you go to nodred.org, you can download it for nothing, you can play with it. Enjoy yourselves, it's a superb piece of technology. Okay, signing off.
I keep using that just so he does sort of get it over in, like you say, sort of 5 minutes as to what it's about. Basically, it's a visual tool for connecting together different objects, such as IoT objects. And there's a big community of people writing these nodes that you can add into it there. He was doing that sentiment analysis that we looked at a couple of weeks ago when we did that. I showed you using tweets as a way of sensing what's going on in the world and how you can decide whether or not they're good, bad comments or bored comments, those things. And these sentiment analysis nodes just attach a score onto the things. You can either set it up on your own machine, if you want to sort of give this a try. You need to install Node.js first, and then Node-RED on top of it, and there's some instruction on how to do it. But also, there's an online version of it. A company called Sense Technic has created a sort of access to it in the cloud, So you get out all the working, all the sort of things that he was doing there, available just through a web page to do it. You just need to create an account at that. And I'll just give you a quick demo or something like that and show you how it might connect to fidgets as well to sort of use. So if you do go to this Sense Technic area, there are commercial parts to it. There's a free option to it that you sign up for it. They just the server will run for 24 hours and then stop and restart. So you can't have a permanent application running on them, but it's great for sort of testing these ones. And as I say, you've got the different variations around there. You sign up, just give an email address to sign up. If you're willing to give your email, I can sort of supply one for you from a Google Cloud account that we've got for students if people don't particularly want to use that. I've signed up for one with a couple already. I've signed in there, just at the top left. If I just boot it up and show you one of these sort of things in action. So you get the screen. I'll just get rid of the side screen there to sort of visit it. Have a look at some sort of flows, if you like. And I can show you this sort of building from scratch, but in fact I will do in a sort of new window really for it. What I can do is to take, say, the slider and get that to email every slider position to an account, or just to sort of generally display it to it. That's done with somebody broadcasting that, and the thing there on the left is an MQTT node where you can get it to subscribe to or publish to different sort of topics. So in this case, I've got the server there. You'll see the broker, the MQTT dashboard, and I've got it subscribing to MMU fidget /hash, which means I'll subscribe to everything that MMU fidget is, everything published to MMU fidget for it. You see, those nodes are just down here at the sort of bottom for it. There's some HTML nodes. If you want to build up HTML pages, there's a sentiment one, email ones, and Twitter ones. I'm just looking at the MQTT. I must have just missed it somewhere. There it is. The MQTT, therefore, that's an output MQTT for if you're receiving messages for it, or the other way around for if you're publishing to sort of get out. So in this case, as I say, I've got this one that was defined to use a particular broker, a particular topic, gave a name to it, and then I've just got a debug node attached to it, and all that debug node does is just print whatever comes out of that one. I've also got an email node that just allows me to use a particular account and says, okay, when you receive a message, just send it to my EPMMU account there using the Gmail server to get to it. There are bits to get it that you have to put your username and password that you're signing in from. So that's the validation, the user ID and password. That's the user at that particular account, and then who you want to send it to. So if we just sort of quickly show this, if I'll clear that window, so we've not got anything in, and deploy. Now at the moment, it's just there's some old messages that have just sort of come through. I'll clear it. At the moment, there's nobody broadcasting to that. I've got the MMU fidget one. Now we've got some sort of test ones here. And if you go back to some of the lab things that we had things like a publisher. And the publisher just said, okay, I want to broadcast out to MMU fidget this brightness and temperature, and it broadcasts out some dummy values for it. It broadcasts out the brightness and the temperature. So if I set that going for it, so that's busy publishing these brightness and temperatures, And if I go back to my MQTT window, I've got my client there listening to the debug output, and supposedly all those are being sent out as emails as well. So if I go to my inbox, they're starting to come through there. The top one there, dated 9/30, whatever it is, time for it, and all those messages start to come through now that we've sort of broadcast. So if I'll just stop that sending out and try something else. Let's try, say, the RFID client. What the RFID client did, like your own one, the one that you built up in the lab, this read an RFID tag and then published it out somewhere. So I've got a little sort of card. Go back to my window to clear that. A bit of sort of junk going in. That's still subscribing, it's still running. So if I go to my publisher here, my RFID client, and run that one. So that's now, as you know, the usual sort of gathering data for 15 seconds, hold it next to it, okay, I've got it. Let's publish that, another one, publish that. So the usual sort of thing about publishing them there. If I go back to my Node-RED application there, picked up those 3 going through, and with any luck, if I go to my mail, it might not have arrived immediately. Oh, there it is, yeah, the MMU fidget one come through just for that sort of tag. Now that little application just took about, well, how long does it take to drag 3 nodes on and just sort of join them together? It is as easy as sort of picking up one of these sort of email things, dragging it on, and then just creating a link to it. You need to configure perhaps sort of configure the node, but there's all sorts of nodes for these. Let's get rid of that one. There's Twitter nodes, there's Facebook nodes that you can sort of put on. You saw there where I sort of linked it to an RFID. I could go a bit more sort of over the top, and let's link it to the slider one. So if I run the slider application, the one where you know that you get lots of slider messages coming out as you move the slider. So all those being published, your MMU fidget slider. I'll stop it. But look again at the code there. Huge pile of messages come out there just from the slider being sent out. There's a bit of a problem with the email one there. In trying to send the email, I was probably sending it out something like 50 messages there, and I might have hit some sort of limit on the emails being sent to it. So it's quite worthwhile having a look at this as a development tool to be sort of working with. Not every single thing's catered for there, and like there isn't. Well, there aren't many actual fidget nodes you can put in. The way in which I was picking up the fidget thing there was to have a separate program broadcasting it out to MQTT, and then this Node-RED picking it up. There are 1 or 2, if you look for them, there's 1 or 2 fidget nodes out there for it. In actual fact, one of my project students as well last year, we developed a thing together for, quickly go to this one. If you take a look on my YouTube channel, that one. There when we want to sign in. My YouTube channel's got quite a few sort of demos available. Come on, let's find it. Yeah, look at the uploads one. This was a demo that one of my students did last year for it. I can't find all of the sound on here now. Or volume. And in this one, we created our own Amazon Echo nodes to put on there, and some fidget nodes to put on to be able to control the fidgets using Amazon Echo for it. You can do that sort of in normal programming anyway. We were just sort of showing how you might do it using this sort of visual interface approach instead for it. I mean, the video is about sort of 5 or 10 minutes. I'm not going to sort of go through it, but just as a follow-up, if you want to sort of take a look at it, please sort of go to that YouTube channel and have a look at it. You can create your own nodes under Node-RED. You can either use this big library that developers have created, or start to write your own and then start to publish them. So please, take a look at that just on the on this sort of YouTube channel, along with the other ones that's sort of out there. But to give you an idea of what this is about, the whole Node-RED thing, I won't be able to go through all this, but the lecture slides take you through what the sorts of things that you can do with this particular technology. Some of the supporting technologies. This particular section looks at Node-RED and later on MQTT. There's quite a lot of development of software tools going on for this, and it's a common thing to do in a project or a PhD thesis or something to help start developing this, and there's some sort of pointers to some of them. These particular ones look at MQTT in the second part, and this Node-RED, a sort of visual tool for helping you wire together all these different devices down at the bottom, and how they might sort of get up to communicating with the outside world. It just helps you with that wiring of it. The sorts of things that you're writing in the labs, the software to take messages from one object and transmit it out to some database somewhere, or store it, send it out via MQTT to be picked up by somebody else there. So it sort of works really with this MQTT, can work with all these sensors as you've just sort of seen, and you can have a publish and subscribe type approach to broadcast it out for anybody picking up. Now the Node-RED part to it, this just allows you to use fairly common technologies that you're already aware of, whether it's email or Twitter or MQTT, to use some of these sorts of things, but in a much easier way. To say, well, let's just use this template for doing it, and you just fill in the things that are different, like what's the where is the actual server, what's the server address, what's its credentials to log on to it, which is the table that you want to access over. You've been writing it at this low level stage using Java to use the JDBC to access it, and you have all these things like connections, statements and results sets that you've been working with. This just allows you to work at that sort of higher level to work on it, and a variety of them to get over the authorization and the like. So these tools just help you bring these things together. Like there's tools in any sort of area of computing to help you do things at an easier level. The idea being that you can have a series of nodes there going down the left, input or output type ones, and you just basically wire them together. You just sort of say, well, the output of this goes to the input of something else. So we say, well, let's grab an MQTT subscription and then let's send that to a database, or let's send that to just a general display. There's HTML nodes that you can use, so you can get something like a web page that's running with this in the background to sort of generate a nice HTML front end. If you're doing anything in this field in your project, it definitely is a way of trying some of these sorts of things out for it. So it's a software tool that was originally developed by IBM, but became open source, and a lot of developers got on board to be able to sort of work with it. And it's a very lightweight way of producing some of these. However, it doesn't solve everything. You may say, well, why weren't we using this from day one or something, instead of learning all this sort of Java code or whatever sort of style code you like? The problem is that, like many of these high-level tools, they make a lot of assumptions on what you're sort of doing for it. And it may not be the best way of doing it. It's great for creating conceptual ideas and actually runtime ideas if it does your final versions of it. Very sort of straightforward to put things together, but you might not have the very much low-level part to sort of do it. But it's a great way to try this bit about how can I get data from this place to another one and slightly change it along the way. It's not particularly high performance, enterprise sort of capable thing, but it's not really for working at that sort of level to it. It's not the answer to life, the universe and everything. It's a great tool to use in the right sort of situation, where you're wanting to quickly knock together these sorts of things. And we'll see we're in the last lecture of the term. We've got a guest lecturer coming in from one of the companies that I work with, over a company called Tyrrell Systems. And they use Node-RED for developing all their IoT and smart things software to sort of have it. So you can deploy it in a variety of situations. You can deploy it on Raspberry Pi if you want to sort of work with that. You can work with sort of sensors directly. There's quite a few Arduino nodes to sort of put in there. That demo page is just that Roderick Yates's point to it. As I say, it's built on top of Node.js in the first place, so any coding that you do, there's these function nodes where you can actually manipulate parts and you can put some code in, but that's JavaScript code that you put in. It's not sitting on top of Java for it. So yeah, front and sort of back end to it. The whole thing does store its data. These nodes that you put together, you build up what we call a flow of perhaps some sort of input node picking up from somewhere. You might change things along the way, and then you've got selection nodes to work with it. Just like with when you're writing code in a normal Eclipse project, you've got some source code that's saved in the background, and then when you load it up, you get that nice visual representation. This is a visual representation of some code behind the scenes. And again, like say with Android programming, you get a lot of XML, and then when you load it up, you get this nice design view, looking something like a graphical design. But in the background, what's ended up being stored, all these nodes are represented as JSON objects. And you get a big sort of JSON file representing that collection of nodes. And if you want to transfer one of those flows from one machine to another, you can just take that JSON text file and import it on something else. That's the source in the background. It's not something that you would ever sort of edit yourself. So you don't get in there and start changing the code yourself, because these are all sort of generated from that front end part to it. They're generated from there. So that particular one was represented in a series of JSON objects for it. But it's perfectly possible, yeah, to run it on. There's a great sort of picture there. Got a Raspberry Pi sort of linked up to some sensors, picking the data up and broadcasting it out to sort of work with. But as I say, it's not the be-all and end-all. It doesn't do everything. for it. You still would have to at some point know the behind the scenes code to work with these. Now there's a bit more just in the lecture slides. We're on the sort of finishing point now for it there. So take a look at the rest of the lecture slides, have a look at what it can sort of do, and there's some background